Some would describe her as animalistic. He just described her as fantastic, with a hint of crazy, but that was desired, and a figure she'd have until she retired. Her face spoke words without any speech, as did her hands when they touched his cheek. Her lips allowed him to become something else. It was like diving into a hot bath, but with someone else, but not just anyone. In fact, the exact opposite, because she to him was the epitome of perfect. And if they parted for anything more than a week, he'd come up in a rash and would hardly sleep. So he decided he had only one option. He couldn't take another week, so he made the decision to get down on his knee and to secure a future with him and her, and he hoped a four-poster, but she had radically different ideas. She had planned to travel for a number of years. With or without him, she hadn't decided. And when the time came, their lives collided, as she wanted this and he wanted that. So he packed up his stuff and left her flat. And you don't need to be together to survive this part of life. And you can move on like the weather to survive in this harsh life. So for 2 years, she had no fixed abode. He had a cat but no wife or girlfriend at home. She did psychedelics and he, well, didn't. But he lived on 30 grand and she lived on pittance. So you see, there were perpendicular differences in the lives they lived. They had gotten over each other, but he still thought about their kids, if they had had them, what they might be like. But no facial merging software would be able to get it right. So he would never know and she would never guess. But she thought about him every time she got undressed. The way he used to look at her when she revealed her pale skin. He was mesmerized by her and everything within. He was the only one who made her feel like that. He was the only one who knew every line and dimple on her back. But they were, more often than not, thousands of miles apart, with each other forgot. And she returned home 22 months after traveling to her parents' abode with the knowledge of almost everything, but they didn't meet up or arrange to have coffee. After all, 2 years with no contact meant there was no such offering. But you don't have to be together to survive this part of life, and you can move on like the weather to survive in this harsh life. He still went drinking on Saturday nights, but she thought that the nightlife was for those who like to fight. She'd seen Easter Island, the Northern Lights, and everything in between, and he thought that Cassiopeia was somewhere in the Mediterranean. But these differences meant absolutely nothing. After a couple of months of her return, she needed a job or something to help her pay her way to move into a flat. So she applied at the place where he worked, but she didn't know that if she had got the job, he would have trained her, but they didn't like her application, so they didn't arrange for her to coincidentally meet him. And it wasn't for 2 years that they finally ran into each other and realized their worst fears. He still pined for her dimples and pale skin, and she needed his looks, his security, and for a next of kin. So eventually they got together, and after a few months dating, they got married and basically started waiting for her to get pregnant and for him to be complete. And they tried and tried for weeks and weeks, but nothing grew, and she stayed regular. And they found out he couldn't have kids, and that destroyed her. So she panicked and left him, and he was back to the start. A 30-something-year-old divorcee with no reason to laugh, no reason to smile or to be happy at all. And it wasn't until he 50 that he stopped drinking and started to fall for a woman who he loved. Not to have kids, but just to share his four-poster and love him to bits. And about 60, that man started to have regrets that he didn't go travelling or do psychedelics. So off he went round the world, smoking pot and taking shrooms, and died midway through his trip skydiving in Cancun.